So where do you draw the line between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism? I'm joined now by Eylon Aslan-Levy, who set up the Everyday Anti Semitism blog to highlight such instances, and Ben Soffa from the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign. Tell me, first of all, why did you start up this blog at this point?
Well, recent reports indicate that the vast majority, sorry, not the vast majority, but very many anti-Semitic incidents across the UK, across Europe, be it vandalism, verbal assault, don't get reported, either to the police or to community security bodies. But I hear about it because friends and colleagues tell me about it. And I get the feeling that sometimes the Jewish community either keeps its head down because it's afraid of really confronting the problem and expects that it might blow over. And in large part, society likes to think that the problem doesn't exist because we're not reporting it. So I set up the project in order to encourage people to report their experiences.
But the timing, has that been tied to what you see as a spike or as a rise?
Absolutely. I mean, there's been an astonishing spike in the last 2 weeks. A friend of mine, Jewish friend of mine, verbally assaulted at an EDL rally. Another man had "Death to the Jews" shouted at him by people on the way to a pro-Palestinian demonstration in North London last week as he was leaving synagogue. So
you mentioned the pro-Palestinian demonstration. It's a good point to bring you in, Ben. I mean, at the big demonstration last week, there were banners saying, "Well done, Hitler would be proud." I mean, many Jewish people and certainly commentators are saying that these demonstrations are fueling anti-Semitism.
Well, I think it's very important to start by saying we totally condemn all of these incidents and what we've seen in the package. But there's also the thing of when you have tens and tens of thousands of people standing up for humanitarian reasons against the outrages that are happening in Gaza, it is unsurprising that if there is racism in British society, that there will be a handful of these people who we work very, very hard to try and exclude from our demonstrations, exclude from our movements. And
the allegation is that your organisations are being used in a sense as an excuse, that the mask has been lifted and that people who are anti-Semitic are using these demonstrations to make exactly those points.
I think there's a very big difference between we are being used by racists who exist and have to be struggled against by ourselves and by the whole community, and that the mask has been slipped, and that basically these are demonstrations that are of a racist character, which is what some people have suggested. And I think that's the difference between those who prioritise correctly the struggle against racism and the struggle against anti-Semitism, and then some people who are willing to just use this to try and put the whole of those who are motivated by correct humanitarian reasons back in a box.
What's your response to that?
Sure. Well, certainly the perspective from the Jewish community is that in pro-Palestinian circles, you seem to be tolerating an awful amount of incitement that really makes us, frankly, not particularly surprised at the spike in anti-Semitism. You have it here, for example, on the screen, equating the swastika with the Star of David, accusing Israel of committing a Holocaust, an allegation as obscene as it is ludicrous. And in that context, we're not surprised when people then step up attacks on the Jews, when we have images like this telling them that we're as bad as the Nazis.
Our condemnation of that has actually been welcomed by the Community Security Trust, the main Jewish body, condemning that, opposing anti-Semitism.
But it's there, isn't it? It's there at the demonstrations.
Sadly, these are public events and we're not the police, so we argue against these people, we try and push them out, but ultimately I think that these are matters for only the police can actually physically remove signs from people.
And would you like that to be done?
I think that's perfectly acceptable. I mean, I'm Jewish myself. We have a very, very strong Jewish presence on all these demonstrations, and we've very much, it's not the one or two cranks with a home-written sign who are leading these demonstrations, but people who are very much putting out an anti-racist message, and including tonight where I spoke, I was very, very clear that to be a united movement, we have to have absolutely no space for these racists.
I mean, do you think that people like Elon and their arguments, they deserve an apology? Do you accept that?
I think there's a very big gap between the totally legitimate response, which is a political response, and which is our demonstrations and our lobbying is a political response, and then I think there is the totally inappropriate targeting of British Jews, which is totally intolerable.
I mean,
right?
isn't that the point, that these are legitimate demonstrations? They are, for many people, legitimate criticism.
Absolutely. I mean, you want to free Palestine? Fine. I'd like to see a free Palestine as well, next to, rather than instead of a free Israel, which is perhaps contrary to some of what their banners suggest, with from the river to the sea. But, we've seen demonstrations in Germany saying Jewish swine to the gas. In Spain, in Ceuta in North Africa, particularly chilling examples, mobs rampaging through the streets in France. Now, I don't know whether Palestinian organizations have been vocal in condemning it. If they've been vocal, those voices haven't reached the mainstream Jewish community, because we're not hearing it.
we have been very vocal, and we are very, very happy to work with any Jewish community organisation that is going to work with us positively to try and exclude these people. And I think that there have been really horrible scenes in other countries, which I think actually you can draw the difference that those haven't been replicated in Britain.
Although the danger is, and I saw a pro-Palestinian campaigner write a blog saying there weren't many of these people at demonstrations, but it's very dangerous that they're there because it sows a seed. Do you accept that?
It is. It is very dangerous that these people even exist in society. And that is that we have to work very, very hard
very quickly, because one of the accusations that is often made is that the rush to say this is anti-Semitism is to dampen down the debate, is to end the debate. What do you say about that?
I mean, just look at the recent Jewish Policy Research Institute report on Jewish community in the UK. 6% of UK Jews think that criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. It's a negligible number. Incidentally, the same number that think that anti-Semitic incidents have gone down, it's negligible.
Very briefly, would you like to see these demonstrations stopped?
No, by all means demonstrate. I just don't want to see this incitement going on.
Ben Soffa, thank you very much. I'm going to have to end it there.
Thank you.
Eylon Aslan-Levy, Kathy.